Hello, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and I am really excited today to show you this new tuck stitch. It is a beautiful 3D dimensional stitch that brings such a wonderful texture to your fabric. It's this little row of contrasting color that's tucked under, so it gives you this beautiful ridge. So let's talk all about how to do this tuck stitch as well as this beautiful lace pattern. All right, let's begin by talking about how to do this fun tuck stitch. And then after I show you this fun stitch, then we'll talk about how to do this beautiful lace stitch between those two, which produces this wave of stitching. Now, of course, you can do this tuck stitch in just a straight knitting style. I thought it looked really fun to do a wave thing. So if you want to know how to do this lace things, which will give it that wave feel when you do the tuck stitch, stay tuned after I show you this stitch. We'll look at the lace stitch next. If you want a full pattern on how to do this blanket, I am making a baby blanket with these two stitches. I will have a link in the description below, so make sure you click on that if you want full instructions on how to do the blanket. So let's begin. I'm to the point in my blanket, in my pattern, where I want to start my next tuck stitch rows with this orange contrasting color. Now you'll see in just a moment that it's much easier to do this stitch when you are using a contrasting color for these tuck stitches, but you can of course use it with the same color. It's just a little bit harder to pick up that stitch than it is when you have a contrasting color. So we're going to get started by just joining my orange color yarn, and what I'm going to do for this stitch is I'm going to knit 6 rows of stockinette stitch. So that means I am going to be knitting on my right side and then purling on the wrong side, and I'm going to be doing that for 6 rows, and that will give me the length that I need to then tuck that stitch under. So let me fast forward here a little bit, and I will get my 6 rows of stockinette stitch done, and then I will show you how to tuck those stitches under. All right, so I have completed 6 rows of stockinette stitch, and now I am ready to tuck this stitch under to make this really pretty 3D ridge. So I am not going to need my orange thread anymore, my orange yarn, so I'm going to just go ahead and trim it. And then just an extra tip, this just makes it easier for me. I'm going to go ahead and weave in my ends of this orange yarn now before I tuck it over, and the reason for that is now I've got some nice space to tuck my ends in. If I wait till I tuck it over, I'm going to have a very limited space here to weave my ends in with the same, hiding it in the same color. So, and then this of course would just save a ton of time at the end of my project if I already have these ends weaved in. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now, take care of that, weave in those ends, and then we'll get to tucking this in. Okay, now I have finished weaving in those ends. Now let's do this tuck stitch. So what we're going to do when we tuck this stitch over is that we are going to pick up this first row of orange stitches that we created on our very first row of knitting that orange row. And they're very easily identifiable when you have an alternating color like that because they sit right below these gray bumps. We're going to pick up the orange bumps right below that. Now, if you are doing this with the same color yarn, you're just going to have to remember to do it 6 rows down. So you'll need to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows down and pick that stitch up there. As you see, it's a lot easier if it's an alternating color because it's so obvious where you pick that up. So here's our first knit stitch right here. Here's our second stitch we're going to pick up. So we're going to just kind of grab it with our right needle and put it on our left needle, just like that. And now we will, with our main color, so with our gray color, we are going to knit those 2 stitches together, the regular stitch and the one that we just pulled up from below. So knit those 2 stitches together. split my yarn here. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to find our very next stitch, which is this one right here. So just pick that one up and put that on the left needle. And now we will knit those two together. And you want to keep doing that across the row. Ignore these little ends, these are where I weaved in my ends here. Next stitch right here, you want to make sure you're getting the very one, because if you're off a stitch, you're going to be off at the end. So don't skip any of these. Just pick up that very next orange stitch, put it on the needle, and knit those two stitches together. Eventually you should be able to, I was letting go and looking below here, but eventually you should be able to kind of just tip your knitting over to the back side, locate that next stitch, pick it up with that right needle, or you can pick it up with the left needle, whatever is easy for you. I find it's a little bit easier to grab with this needle. Very next stitch. You'll see that this one's being tugged. That's why I know that that was the one I already did. The very next stitch is right here. And then we'll continue to do that to the end of the row. And I'll just keep doing this and meet you at the end where I will show you just how to kind of identify those last few stitches, because you certainly don't want to miss any of those last ones, and sometimes they can be a little bit hidden at the end of the row. All right, I am getting to the very end of my row here, and you can see so far how this has produced this really cool 3D tucked over stitch along this orange ridge here. So when you get to those last few stitches, it may be a little bit harder to pick up and see, but we just want to make sure we grab all those last things. Now you'll see that I've got 4 stitches left on my needle, but my particular pattern, I am doing a nice little selvage edged here, which requires me to only slip stitch this last stitch here. So I do not need to knit that stitch. So I do not need to knit that with one below. So I'm looking now for my last 3 stitches here, and I see that I've got them right here, here, and then there's that last one that's tucked in over there. So those are the last 3 stitches we're going to pick up. So let's grab this one right here, put it on our left needle, and knit those two together. Pick up that second to the last stitch, knit those two together, and then that last one tucked right in there, and knit those two. All right, and then my last stitch, I am just slipping it, so I do not need to pick that one up. Okay, so there we have our beautiful tuck stitch. Now let's talk about how to do this really fun lace stitch, which produces this wave thing. I need to get back to the other side to get back to my right side row, so I'm just going to now purl back to my right side, and then I will show you the 4-row repeat that produces this lace stitch, which creates this beautiful wave. All right, we're ready to do our little lace stitch here, which is going to produce this wave, which will in turn keep our tuck stitches in a nice wave pattern as well. So this lace stitch is very easy. It's only a 4-row repeat. I've chosen on this particular pattern to do that 4-row repeat 3 times for this much lace pattern in between each of my tuck ridges. So here's row number 1 for this lace pattern. I again have a selvage stitch on my end, so I'm going to just start with just 1 knit stitch, but that is not part of the pattern. That's just my selvage stitch I'm doing at the end. And then here is the stitch pattern for this row number 1. We're going to start with doing 3 knit 2 together stitches. So knit these first 2 stitches together, and we're going to do 3 of those. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so 3 knit 2 together, and now we're going to do a series of yarn overs and knit stitches 6 times. So we're going to knit 1, do a yarn over, And now we're going to do that 6 times. So that was 1, knit, yarn over 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that was just 6 repeats of knitting 1 stitch and then a yarn over. Okay, now we'll end this little stitch pattern with 3 more knit 2 togethers. So knit 2 together, 1, knit 2 together, 2, knit 2 together, 3. So that is our little stitch repeat we're going to do all the way to the end of the row. So let's do it one more time together. So it's going to start with 3 knit 2 togethers. 1, 2, and 3. Now we'll do those 6 knit 1 and yarn overs. Knit, yarn over for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we'll end this with 3 more knit 2 togethers. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so let's continue that stitch repeat until the end of this row, and then we'll go to row number 2. Okay, completed that row 1. Let's start row 2. And again, for my salvaged edge here at the end, I'm actually purling my first stitch on my wrong side row. That again is not part of the pattern, that's the salvage stitch. So now on row 2, we're actually going to knit all the stitches. So even though we're on the wrong side, we are going to knit our stitches. That's going to produce this nice little bumpy ridge here on our pattern. So row 2, very simple, just knit across, and when you get to those yarn over stitches that we did on the previous row, just go ahead and knit right in that big hole there. That is going to create for us these nice little holes in our lace pattern. So go ahead, just knit right into those holes. You don't need to knit through the back loop or anything like that, just knit those. So knitting all across for row number 2. All right, let's take a look at rows 3 and 4, which are just as easy as row 2, because row 3 is just going to be all knit. So we're going to knit across row 3, and then row 4 is just going to be all purl. So that's going to be the ending of our 4-row repeat. Row 3 all knit, as I'm doing here, and then row 4 will be all purl. So I'll meet up with you after row 4. All right, I've completed all 4 rows of my lace stitch here, and I'm going to do that 2 more times to give it this length here between my tuck stitches. So you would just continue with that pattern. After 2 more repeats of that, I will go to my blue ridge tucked pattern, and it makes really just a beautiful blanket. And so I hope you give this stitch a try. It is really a fun way to add some dimension to your finished piece, give it a little bit of a flair. So super fun to do. Hope you found this helpful, and if you did, I hope you consider subscribing to my channel, Jack Knits, to get instructions on new stitches or new knitting patterns each week. So thanks for watching, everyone. Happy knitting.